Michael Graves, modestly describes himself as a general practitioner. Others, like New York Times architectural critic Paul Goldberger, describes him as truly the original voice American architecture has provided in some time. Actually, Michael Graves defines simple labels. While he is considered the dean of postmodern architectural movement, he may be best known for his playful teapot that he designed for Target stores. Recognized as an outstanding professor, he taught architecture at Princeton University for 40 years. And his drawings, which are central to the approach to architectural design, have been exhibited at the Whitney, Cooper Hewitt, and the Berlin museums. While the architectural firm he founded in 1964 has designed the exteriors and interiors of many of the world's most admired municipal buildings, museums, and corporate headquarters around the world, you may have experienced his work firsthand during a stay at the Swan in Dolphin Hotels at Walt Disney World in Orlando. So I'll not attempt to label my good friend Michael Graves, other than to say he is one of the most creative and gifted men I've ever met. And for all the designers, architects, and planners in the audience this afternoon, I would add that he's an extraordinary role model. Michael earned his undergraduate degree in architecture at the University of Cincinnati, a master's degree from Harvard University, and also studied art and architecture at the American Academy in Rome. For Michael Graves, design begins with an understanding of people. An essay titled "A Case for Figurative Architecture," Michael writes about the relationship of the human figure to architectural form, arguing that good design is based on man's social, psychic, and physical occupation of the environment. I had the opportunity to witness his personal philosophy and on hand here in Detroit, working with Michael on the renovation and expansion of the Detroit Institute of Arts, focusing on how people navigate the museum and respond to the art in his collections. We were able to dramatically improve the visitor experience at the DIA, while adding exhibit space and addressing a number of serious structural problems throughout the historic building. Michael and his firm began to work on the DIA in 1988, assisting with our master plan and guiding us along with the Smith Group through completion at our renovation and expansion in 2007. When most people think about the work of Michael Graves and Associates, they think of such distinctive projects as the Portland Building in Oregon, the Minneapolis Institute of Art, the Federal Building and Bank of Dallas, the U.S. Courthouse in Washington, D.C., and corporate headquarters of Humana in Louisville. But what I think about is space I work in every day. Michael designed the interiors of my Bloomfield Hills and New York offices, including much of the furniture, so that it's a good thing that I do like his work. And I'm only one out of, not the only one. Over the years, Michael Graves and Associates have been honored with more than 200 awards of experience. And Michael has been recognized with the Gold Medal of the American Institute of Architects, the National Medal of Arts from the President of the United States. a very generous and civic-minded man. Michael is the honorary chairman of Freedom by Design program of the American Institute of Architectural Students. The national campaign focuses on the making of built space more welcoming and acceptable for people with physical challenges. And Michael is helping us this evening with an auction to raise funds for this important initiative. Friends, it's a special honor for me to be able to introduce Michael Graves to Lawrence Tech community. We're in the presence of genius. So please join me in welcoming one of the most important general practitioners in the last century, my friend, Michael Graves.
You cannot be late to a Taubman class. That's the first thing you've got to learn here. Don't you know that? I was late once, and I've known Alfred for 25 years. So this doesn't work. Where to start? I was offered a script for today, which I'm not going to work from, I'm sorry. But Alfred said it was all right, that I could do anything I wanted to do. So we're going to go back to school. As was said by Professor Emeritus Taubman, I taught at Princeton for a long time, and that stands me in very good stead to talk to you, I think, about urban planning, but not the kind of thing that Alfred can talk about so well. I mean, I look back at my college days, and especially in my graduate studies at Harvard, if I'd had one afternoon like this, I would have felt it was worth the trip. But it was a different time, and I'll talk a little bit about that tonight, about education, and it's not as boring as education. It's a little bit more lively than that, but you'll see. Now, what I want to do, and you can ask questions during this, let's just have a conversation. I know you won't, but I would appreciate it if you did. If you don't understand what I have just said or meant or whatever, interrupt, it's okay. And I really do mean that. But I'm going to start with a comparison between what urban planning, if you will, wasn't called that, it was town planning, it was anything, it was the making of Paris, Rome, every city in Europe, Boston, New York, everywhere. It was the idea of putting the cities together with a certain consistency, if you will. Now, what I'm going to show you are plans that were certainly made before the automobile. And it's like talking to a group of architects today. You can't talk about architecture today without recognizing the computer. And I can't talk about planning today without recognizing the automobile, especially in the capital of automobiles here in Detroit. All right. Now, I'm going to compare 20th century planning to that traditional planning for just the first 10, 15 minutes. So be patient with that and understand that we don't make cities like this anymore, but we can count on one hand, at least me, that I think we should. It's not that we do it without automobiles, but we do it better with automobiles. Now, I'm going to have to look at this, if you don't mind, so I'm not really turning my back to you. I'm turning my side to you. Look at these two plans, and look at these two images. And on the right-hand side is the Noli plan, 1746 by John Battista Noli. Come in, we've been waiting for you.
Glad you could make it.
So happy. That's 23. You'll hear about it later. Noli made a big plan of Rome. Sometime, I don't know whether Lawrence Tech has a copy of it, but they could have a copy of the reprint, which was done by, of all places, Princeton Architectural Press a number of years ago. Now you've had a minute to look at it. It's here. Oops, sorry. And, oh shit. I want you to look at the Piazza Navona here. Piazza Navona in the first century in Roman times was filled with water, and there were various water sports, and all the gladiators and all of that raced in this hemicycle here, and there was another one down there. But this is first century stuff, that void that you see here. The rest of it is mostly Renaissance, Baroque and Renaissance. Here's the Pantheon. And what is curious about this plan is certainly these are the sidewalks and streets. You figured that out. And here's a little piazza in front of the Pantheon that you can see in various movies if you haven't been there. But inside, of course, is the plan. And this plan shows you the interior of the Pantheon. It shows you the interior of this church. It shows you the interior of this church, that palazzo, this one. All of this has been described in a very special way. These were public buildings. There was nobody there with a metal detector. All of that was before, okay? And the reason you can walk into an Italian church today, like this one, is it's always open. It was there as your house. The city was seen very, very differently. It wasn't a place to be afraid, to be worried. It wasn't about any of those fears that we were taught later. But it is fascinating to me to see that, of course, the streets and squares are drawn in white here and made public, therefore, and that the interior of these buildings the same, and that the rest of the buildings, like this one here, is not a public building. That's housing and offices, to be sure. So it is a way of thinking about the city and the ground plane. When we make a plan, we're making a plan to walk on. That's what the architect thinks about. I know there are only a few architects here, and some of you are planners, and no, that's not true. They're all architects. Then they know this, don't you? Yeah, sure you do. Now, adjacent to this is something called the vision plan, the Voisin plan by Le Corbusier. Now here is Paris, looking very much like the Noli plan of Rome. All of this is mostly medieval in Paris. But what Le Corbusier said was, let's wipe all of this out. This happened to be one of the most revered sections of Paris. So he took the one where there was the most nostalgia about it, the left bank, and tore it down in his dreams. He didn't get to do that. And he made this model of these cruciform towers here and said, in the 20th century, that's how we should be living. Well, here's Mr. Ground Plan down here, as it is here. And on that are object buildings. We continually make object buildings in modern architecture. This has nothing to do with object buildings. This is making a city. Look at building 1, building 2, building 3, building 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's one continuous facade. It makes sense. It makes the street first. You hear a lot today about star architects, etc., making object buildings, buildings that look like birds' nests in China. Forget all that. That's BS. It just is. It isn't architecture. It's of the moment. It's what the New York Times loves because they can sell more papers, make more controversy, and have people like me all riled up. All right. Corb wanted to build these towers. He didn't get to. But we in the United States did. Those of you who've been to New York know that we did. You can see these cruciform towers on Manhattan Island. And they are as woeful as this picture makes them look. Where did all this start? Now, it didn't start with the Nolly plan of 1746. And it didn't start with the Moissan plan of Le Corbusier. But if we tell an apocryphal story, I would tell it like this, that if this is the landscape, so sorry. If this is the landscape here that we start with, the open virgin landscape, and we are an agrarian society, we need to grow things to live, we need to plow it up, this is early man, we need to plant, we need to harvest, we eat, and we do it again the next year and next year. We don't think that way today. It's like when I asked my son when he was about 4, Adam, where does water come from? He said, the faucet, Dad, the faucet. I knew I had a lot of work to do. Now, where does the kumquat come from? Where does the mushroom come from? Well, let me pretend that it comes from here. Some farmer has cleared this. There's the forest. There's a bit of the forest. This is a mountainside here. And there is the cleared landscape to be planted. And when that was planted, we are told this by people who deal in myths and rituals of the society. I'll be a little faster later in the lecture. But if we plant this, and the first man came in with his machinery, which was nothing more than a blade pulled by an oxen, perhaps, and around he went into a smaller and smaller square, finally ending at the center. And he thought, what a wonderful thing this was. Still an apocryphal story. How far is it from the truth? Probably not very far. But he would cross this place of entry, and I've never been this close to this slide, but you see this little pavilion here. Let's make that a front door, just for today. So every time he crossed this place of entry, he picked up his blade and carried it across the threshold upon entry. And so this was a blessed place for him, this entrance into this magical realm of planting. It's springtime. The first planting came up, whatever it was, corn, let's say. And with great joy, here was the corn to be picked. What to do, this takes the apocryphal story into a little bit of more fantasy now. What to do with that first one. Imagine this as a church or a synagogue or a mosque. And where would you put that first and blessed ear of corn? Would you just stand there with great awe and eat it? Would you offer it back to the gods? Probably the latter. Because this was before science. We can't even think this way anymore. Robert Graves, the classical scholar, does think this way. He thinks that we, of course, had to make up our science, had to make up our reasoning. That's why there are, in the Roman world, so many gods. They had a god for everything: water, fire, wind. Everybody had a story. And those stories became the kind of pagan religion. All right, here, I would imagine that they would go into the forest and find a big rock, put the rock here at the head of the field, put the ear of corn on it, and do a kind of genuflect and walk out. The next day there were many more ears. Then you could get down to business, pick the corn, feed the village, whatever, and on you went. That cycle, and cycle is very important. It's also very important to our villain today, Le Corbusier. He shows the cycle of the day with a sine wave, the cycle of the hour, the month, the day, the year, and we keep doing this cycle over and over. We're at mid-cycle today, right? We're in the early afternoon. We can we know that it's going to be dark. We know tomorrow morning we're going to get up and smell the breezes. All of that is our science that tells us why that is true. These people didn't know that. All right. Moving ahead 1,500 years, I take you to Siena. Magical little town. Really good restaurant right there. And I want to show you not that field of harvest anymore, but this space here. This is, like I said, for the square in Rome, the Campidoglio. Here is another race course. This is where the great Palio race takes place, with horses. 17 families vie against each other to wear the colors for that next year. It's all rigged now, but they do it anyway. And everybody comes to see the race. And the horses fall down and they have a grand time and they drink for a week. And it's a time of celebration. It's the beginning of spring. So here is this meeting place. They call it a campo. We would call it a square. We would call it a lot of different things in America. They'd call it a square in most of Europe. In Italy, it's a campo. And it is of great value to this talk because now the brighter kids in the class have seen that this is the Noli plan again. And there's a church back here. And there's the city hall right here. And there's the beacon for the city hall. And there's a big door which says, come in. So like the Noli plan, you can use the ground plan of this city. It is yours. It is your city. Now let's take that shape of the Campo di Siena and look at the plan of Bath, which is a city built by the Adams brothers in the 17th century in England. And here is really wonderful housing. This isn't low income, folks. You wanted to be here if you had a house in Bath. The reason you had a house in Bath was to come and take a bath in their spring waters. And you probably owned this house and a palazzo in London as well. This is the public square for all of those people. Now there's an exclusionary thing here. Everybody here can use this. You can throw your frisbee out here if you like, doesn't matter, but this is where you'd have your barbecue, out here. This is where you'd have your garden party. You didn't have it in your yard. You had it in everybody's yard. This belonged to you. This was the city's. And this was what Le Corbusier thought he could do with this ground plan. This would belong to everybody. And these cruciform towers here in the Voisin plan, or the Ville-Radieuse, is seen here. And here we are having a cappuccino in the foreground. No middle ground here, as any good painting would have. And then the background seen out here. with these towers out here. He's very excited about air transportation. He didn't come into Detroit yesterday, bumpity, bumpity, bumpity. Anyway, the difference is palpable in that this is land that belongs to nobody. This is nowhere. It doesn't belong to you and me. We can't have the kid's sandbox in it. If the kid lives up here and the sandbox is down here, it will be trampled because it is not governable. It's one continuous field. I'll almost finish with this little preamble. I want to show you this comparison up at the top. This is the Uffizi Gallery. If you go to Florence, you'll surely go to the museum, which is called the Uffizi. Any of you speak Italian? You know that Uffizi stands for offices. Now, why would they call the art gallery of Florence, and all of Tuscany for that matter, offices? Well, it once was the papal offices of Florence. The cardinal was from Florence, and this was in fact his house. This was the cardinal's house. This is the Arno River out here. This is a big void. Here it is down here. That's the river down there. This was all of the house there, and it had a facade that was a void as well. The front door was over here. It was nothing, the way it is today. And here is the campo, as it were, the square, in front of the Uffizi. Now, here are a series of rooms which are all the galleries of the Uffizi. It works brilliantly for a house, bedrooms, living rooms, all of that, for offices, and for the gallery of the Uffizi. So you get all the way through this. You can take an alternative route on your way back. You could go along the loggia here, which is right out here, inside, where you find a lot of sculpture. So you can go all the way through one way and all the way back to the entrance another way. Adjacent to that, I've got a picture, a roof plan of the housing tower that Le Corbusier did build. And this one is in Marseille. It's the Marseille block of Le Corbusier. And here it is as an object. Well, I've turned the plan so that it will be the same angle as the void here to make the point. Here's an object building. Here's no man's land, which we could make a big circle out here. Ungovernable. Maybe some plots of ground here that you could till and feel like early man. But here is the square now of the Uffizi, where everybody meets. And underneath that is a loggia where you can buy leather goods and all this stuff. The ground level has been turned back to ours. It is our space. It is our retail. We are a part of this scene. It is our river. That doesn't happen when you're up here. Johnny's got a cold, and Lucy wants to go down and play in the sandbox. In a patriarchal society like we've got, more or less, Mom has to stay up here with the sick child, and the other one is down, can't come down to play with his friends. It's too dangerous, and she can't see him. The visual imperative is crucial in town planning.